Good evening and welcome to News9. I'm Bansi. Karnataka is powerless, and we mean it literally. There is a power shortage across the state, and the citizens sweat it out during the day. They live in pitch darkness during the night. Despite all this power problem, the Karnataka government stands helpless in providing basic amenities like power around the clock. But why is the government unable to help? Is the Karnataka government vulnerable to the forces of nature, or are those in power not powerful enough?
It's lights off in Karnataka. There's darkness across the state. Unnatural forces to be blamed. One state, many worlds. That's the tagline the Karnataka government has been using to lure investors and tourists from across the world. But the pathetic condition in the state is obvious for people living here. Power goes off randomly every now and then, and the entire state is enveloped in darkness. You might be surprised to know that Bengaluru was the first city to get electricity in entire Asia almost 110 years ago. While the entire country was using lanterns to light up their surroundings, electric bulbs were being used at Bengaluru's KR market. That is how much we had progressed way back in 1905. But 110 years later, the situation is disastrous to say the least. The power sector in Karnataka has reached its lowest point, and the government feels no shame in admitting that they cannot provide round-the-clock electric supply to its people. Even in Bengaluru, the state's capital and industrial hub, there is a 3-hour power cut daily. But unofficially, the power cut stretches up to 6 hours a day. While the citizens are cursing the government, politicians are pointing their fingers at something else. Karnataka government blames natural forces for crisis. But the reasons are far from the truth. The Karnataka government is blaming poor rains for the power shortage in Karnataka. But in reality, it is far from the truth. It's not just natural forces that are to blame. The government's inefficiency, laid-back attitude, and lack of vision has resulted in landing the people of the state in darkness. Karnataka needs 8,650 megawatts of electricity each day, but the government is only able to generate a mere 7,187 megawatts daily. The state is falling short of nearly 1,450 megawatts of electricity on a daily basis, and that is the reason behind the load shedding in your locality. Things are going to get worse. If you think that Karnataka is going through a tough phase, you haven't seen anything yet. 4 months down the line, Karnataka will need nearly 10,000 megawatts each day. If the state continues to generate just over 7,000 megawatts of electricity on a daily basis, then it will fall short by nearly 30% in February 2016. Here is a rundown of the electricity generated at various power stations in Karnataka. The government has been using thermal as well as hydro power stations to generate electricity in Karnataka. Raichur Thermal Power Station generates 1,720 megawatt each day, while Ballari Thermal Power Station produces 1,000 megawatts a day. Sharavati Hydro Power Station creates another 1,035 megawatts every day. The National Hydroelectric Power Corporation produces 885 megawatts, while Varahi Hydro Power Station generates 460 megawatts. The Super Hydro Power Station also creates 100 megawatts each day. The saddest part of the story is that some of these power stations are unable to function in their optimal capacity. State-owned power stations have the capacity to generate nearly 6,625 megawatt each day, but in reality, they are just able to produce about 5,200 megawatt daily. Karnataka buys electricity from various other power suppliers like Jindal and Udupi Power Corporations. The government is well aware of its shortfall, but is not bothered enough to take action. Some of the reasons that are causing power shortage might take you by surprise. For instance, the Raichur thermal power station is facing a technical glitch for months, but the government has yet to fix the problem. The story at Ballari thermal power station is no different. Here too, a technical problem has prevented the power station from working to its full capacity. But not much has been done to fix the problems. Udupi power station might be a private supplier, but there too, there is a problem. Rainwater entered the Udupi power station, and this is the reason even the private supplier is unable to generate optimal electricity. Lack of rains has left dams dry, and as an effect, the Sharavati and Supa hydroelectricity power plant are incapable of generating at full capacity. Karnataka might not have received the amount of rain to generate surplus electricity, but the attitude of the government too is causing power shortage. If this is a situation during monsoon, imagine the conditions in the coming summer.
Well, there is no doubt that the government is neglecting the traditional sources of power. But even the non-conventional methods of generating power are failing to make a difference. The solar, windmill generation methods have fallen flat thanks to the government's lack of initiative.
Will solar power plants really take off? Karnataka was the first state in the country to announce huge solar power projects. It had set up a 3 megawatt solar plant at Bangarpet in 2008, which had become a role model to other states in the country. The state government sponsored research which had shown that solar power projects could generate nearly 10,000 megawatts of electricity. Research had shown that if the dry land in the state were used to generate solar electricity, it could create nearly 15,000 megawatts each day. Unfortunately, currently, a mere 60 to 100 megawatts are being generated through solar projects.
Everybody thought the Karnataka policy was a wonderful policy and everybody started following the Karnataka policy. But when we see the implementation, we see the Karnataka projects are implemented very slow. We have started the policy, but if you see the implementation, many other states is already implemented and so many projects are already running, but in Karnataka we are still in the stage of starting the project, beginning the project. This is what actually we see. This is all because the policy what we have in the state and the Land Reform Act what we have in the state, and there are so many other clearances which obstructing the project in the state.
Over the last 5 years, the government has called tenders for projects envisaged to generate nearly 1,000 megawatts. However, none of them have been implemented. Solar policy in Karnataka could have changed the situation in the state, but nothing has been done in this regard. The neighbouring state of Andhra Pradesh announced its solar policy years after Karnataka and has already set up a plant. But the laid-back attitude of politicians in Karnataka is yet to see solar plants in its best form.
Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, though it's so much political instability there, we see more projects have been implemented in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, but Karnataka is going very slow in implementation.
Windmill power projects have fallen flat. The generation of electricity through windmills is also an option in Karnataka. According to experts, districts such as Chitradurga and Belagavi can help in generating nearly 2,600 megawatts of electricity through windmills. But the power generated currently from windmills is negligible. Private companies have signed contracts with the government to generate electricity through windmills, but several projects are yet to be implemented. Companies claim that the government is yet to identify and provide them land for their projects.
Wind projects, we have a very good potential in wind, and we see the wind potential, we can do more than 10,000 megawatt, but if you see the implementation, only 2,000 megawatt is implemented as of now. Why? Because the forest clearance is not happened, environment clearance is not happening, and land conversion is not happening, and government is not providing a land as per the requirement of the wind power projects. So the wind is also lagging.
The state government's research claims that nearly 10,000 megawatts of electricity can be generated through windmill power projects. But the lack of implementation has made windmill projects a fading dream in the state. It is not that the government is unaware of their shortfall, but it is too adamant to pull up its socks. This is not the first time that Karnataka is facing a natural calamity like poor monsoon. It has faced this problem even in the past. But this is the first time that power shortages are being blamed on nature. The year 2003 had seen severe drought in the state, but the government has yet to learn from its experience. It looks like the state has no contingency plans for unseen events. Despite technological advancements elsewhere in the world, the Karnataka government has no idea to fix the technical glitches at power stations in the state. The hydel power projects have failed to work at optimum even during the monsoon, and certainly cannot be expected to generate significantly during the next summer. The government might blame poor rains for the current power crisis in the state, but in reality, they could have made alternate arrangements in such cases to generate electricity. Experts say that lack of vision and a laid-back attitude among politicians and officials have led to the chaos in the state. If the situation continues to be the same, then it won't be a surprise if the people in Karnataka will have to get used to sweaty days and dark nights. A NEWS9 report.
Well, to talk about this, about Karnataka's powerlessness and how long will the Silicon Valley grope in the dark, we have a panel of experts, but you are also welcome to call in and share your thoughts. You can call us on 223-60304 or you can call us on 05. And to talk about this, we have a panel of experts. First, we have Mr. Muralidhar, former President, Federation Karnataka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And also you are associated with the Indian Institute of Management, Bengaluru.
Yes, sir.
And then we have Mr. Jamdar, who's a very well-known IAS officer who also served as Managing Director of the Karnataka Power Corporation. And you are an expert in power.
Thank you.
And we also have Mr. Sridhar Prasad. You have covered power as a journalist. So we will be trying to get your point of view as well. First, let me come to you, Mr. Jamdar. For this entire situation of powerlessness that we, as a city which first got power in India, to this present position where the power situation looks so lame, are we to blame really?
Definitely, we are to blame as a state. We have so many firsts in the country in the power sector. As you said, Bangalore is the first city in India. Karnataka is the first state to get a hydel power station in the country and in Asia, and one of the second in the world. Similarly, we are also first in getting the solar power megawatt size, for which Government of India gave a huge prize, and the Government of India itself came and inaugurated, Mr. Farooq Abdullah. Now, having said that, having innovated and all that, thereafter expansion has been very slow in the last 20 years. Power projects are not like building a low-cost house. A power project is a long gestation projects. And these projects, if you take hydel power, they take as long as, depending upon the terrain, capacity and all that, it may take anything from 5 years to 10 years or 20 years. When it comes to thermal power stations these days, critical, subcritical, supercritical, ultra critical and all that, they may take anything from 5 to 7 years. And when it comes to solar, it's the fastest thing. Solar you can finish in less than 1 year. Wind may take about 2 or 3 years because there are studies to be done and so on and so forth. That being so, when we are power sufficient today, the government should think about 10 years ahead and start the projects today. I just give you, for example, in the year 2008, when I joined the power corporation, situation was no better, it's worse than this. So during that time, I proposed to the government that our total generation capacity in KPCL, Karnataka Power Corporation, was only hardly about around 5,000. I proposed that it can be raised as a government company to something like 14,000 megawatts. We took up huge projects that time, and they are the projects now getting completed. Now Ballari second unit was started then. Now it is complete. Not only complete, is generating now. Ballari third unit work started in 2009, even today not complete, 2016. And Raichur thermal power station, 3 units we started, 2 are now nearing completion. Each one is 800, 800, 800, 3 megawatt, 3 units. 24 megawatts of installation going on. Ballari earlier was only 5, now added 12. And Chhattisgarh we wanted to start 1400. Bidadi we started to start 1400. And we also wanted to start Chhattisgarh 1600. Altogether our whole planned capacity installation was of the order of about 8,000 megawatts, of which so far we have realized completed Ballari Unit 2. Ballari Unit 1 also started that time only. Unit 3 is yet to come. I'm told it is coming up sometime in another 6 months. Ballari 1 unit will be, new unit 800 megawatts should be coming up in next 6 months. Second will be another 1 year. So we still have to be completed 3 projects, totally 1600 plus 700 will be about 2300 megawatts power will be added to Karnataka in less than 1.5 year, 2 years time. They are the projects we started 7-8 years back. Now what I'm trying to say is, government must be proactive in power generation planning and implementation. Today power short is there, you can't just get power just like that. It is not a commodity which you can buy in the market just like grocery or vegetable. Now you can buy something if it is surplus in the national grid, which is not a fact. Now when the monsoon is down, Karnataka is down, because for a long time we were the highest hydel power station in the state in the country. Even today, at the Karnataka Power Corporation, which contributes something like 6,700 megawatts of installed capacity to Karnataka power scenario, the state requires around 8.5 to 9,000 megawatts. We have about 75% of that in KPC, of which 3,700 megawatts, more than 50%, is from hydel station. This year our position is simply because of this. What the power minister says, what the chief minister says, what the government says, true. In other words, today the rains have failed, monsoon has failed, all our dams are less than 40%, which by this time should have been 80%. Now state is starved of the hydel power station, and if you continue to generate at the rate you are doing now for the peak hours in the morning and evening, those dams, to the extent they are less than half filled, will be exhausted in less than 2 or 3 months time. Thereafter what do you do for next 9 months of the state? We are going to have extremely gloomy situation so far as hydel dams are concerned. Similarly, on the thermal, so far so good. The Raichur thermal power station has today 4.5 lakh tons of coal. That's a good thing. Out of units, 1 unit is down, 7 units are generating. To that extent, their generation capacity more than 80%. On the Ballari front, there are 2, only 1 is generating, 1 is down.
Now, they say out of 10,000 megawatt capacity, 10,000 plus that we have in the state, commission capacity, we are able to get only 6,000 plus or nearly 7,000.
Right.
The shortfall is 3,000 megawatts.
On account of hydel.
On account of hydel, and also certain technical issues with the thermal.
That's true, because 500 megawatt capacity unit in Ballari is down, 210 megawatt capacity 7th unit in Raichur is down, so that itself takes away 700 megawatts, totally thermal. On the hydel side, where we should have produced about 3,600, we are producing less than half of that. So you can see the whole chunk of power has gone. On the hydel front, it is rains. On the thermal front, it is 2 units are down. So they will be brought to, in the next month or two, they will bring them back to generation level. I hope it will improve a little bit, but not so, not totally.
Is there a deliberate problem in failing to plan? Because if it is more profitable for me to buy power from private players, why will I invest in my own power sources?
This is exactly what I said earlier. This fact only forced us to go in for a capacity expansion of 6,000 megawatts, out of which we could start a work only worth 4,000 megawatts. Unfortunately, Bidadi gas station, which should have come in less than 2 years' time, it is held up in all kinds of legal litigation over the contacting issues for last 5 years. They have not been able to come out of that thing. Now, on the coal front, it's a little better now, but on a regular basis, there's a big problem. Government should right now plan to go ahead with more and more generation projects, which it is not doing. And mind you, we do not have much capacity left on the hydel side anymore. With all the minis left and whatever problematic things in the Kaveri basin involved, we can at the most generate not more than 1,500, 2,000 megawatts of hydel power, not more than that. On the thermal side, we are a very poor state because we don't have coal.
You don't have coal reserves.
Yes. And in the country as a whole today, coal supply has been problematic for the whole country because Coal India and its subsidiaries have not been able to do justice. So they have been importing lots of coal for last so many years and will continue to be so. And coal power stations are also terribly polluting. There are so many other side issues, pollution issues and all that. So therefore, more and more emphasis on a very large scale like Gujarat, they should go in for solar, they should go in for wind. These are two promising things.
Sources of green energy.
Yes, and then under wind power station, Karnataka has a capacity to generate as much as 14,000 megawatts of power from wind. Unfortunately, 10-15 years back, unnecessary allotments were made on extraneous considerations, not very honestly, and they have not been utilized so far. And government proposes to cancel those allotments and give it to the fresh and good investors, and they have not been able to do it. Obviously, the reasons I won't discuss here. So if they can cancel those old allotments and give it to fresh investors, you can generate double the power, more than double the wind power. Solar, the tremendous scope is there, but somehow so far it's little costly. Even then, that is the only power of the future. And government must be proactive. Government must allocate more funds for that purchase of that directly to the grid, and that is a promising field, solar and wind. Thermal has a bleak future, hydel has a very limited scope.
At the end of the day, an industrialist will invest in power only if it is profitable for himself. He will not do it with a service motive. Mr. Muralidhar, you represent industry. Where do you think this disconnect is? Because on the one hand, we have seen power shortages. It's like Mr. Jamdar said, it's a little better than it was during his time as chairman. But still, we are suffering.
See, there are two issues I would like to highlight and flag. One is the whole country has been talking about the monsoon failure this year. They were saying that southern part of the country would have about 15 to 20% shortage. Both the leading predictors of the monsoon, they had said only they were differing by about a couple of percentage points.
Karnataka has had a 29% shortage.
They predicted 20% for the southern part of the country. So if the government was a little more proactive, like Mr. Jamdar said, they should have factored in this shortage of monsoon, and they should have put their focus completely on the existing availability of thermal generation. You see, even a 80% capacity utilization in thermal, we consider it as something good. But across the world, I know in China, there are certain plants which are running at 100 plus percentage points capacity. So the government should have thought about this, and they should have planned, saying that we are going to have monsoons and problem. So they should have planned about the thermal capacity, how we should do it, number one. Number two is, because we are expecting this to come, the government should have been proactive, and they should have also gone into power purchase in advance, and they could have locked in at reasonable prices to buy power from outside the country, outside the state. Today, the fortunate thing
which is the only thing they're doing. They're buying power from outside the state also.
yeah, but you know, you will get the best price if you're probably planned 2-3
If you
months.
forecast, if you
Yes.
let's say if you're buying power for Mr. Jamdar.
No, I just like to complete. So, from the industry perspective, what happens is today there is almost kind of a recession setting in the manufacturing sector. In the sense,
There is a recession?
There is not a recession. There is not a recession. If you see the purchase managers index PMI, it's almost flat. It's almost flat. So the additional demand normally which comes from the HT users of industry is not been there this year, not much. So that's come as a blessing in disguise. So there is not much of pressure from the industry on the government to supply adequate power. Yes, smaller industries who do not have backup power, they are suffering. You know, power interruptions are too many. We are losing all electronic equipments. Even the motors are getting burned out because of the low voltage. There is an issue on that. But at a macro level, the government certainly, taking a short-term perspective into account, could have done a much better planning.
Could have planned
they could
better.
have planned better. They could have gone ahead and told all the thermal power plants, look guys, you have more responsibility, keep it in a best form possible and try to generate more. You know, that lethargic attitude that, you know, it can
Chalta
happen.
hai
Chalta hai attitude is what has formed, because, you know, any machine in a thermal unit, he knows it better, can conk off at any time, but unless you are really ready to do things, it's going to be a big issue.
Now, let me.
We slip into a short break on that note, but do stay tuned. Welcome back. We're talking of the real painful power cuts that Bengalurans are going through. We're talking of power cuts across the state. Why are we going through these power cuts? Why couldn't the government have foreseen this and planned better?
So, I just one more point I would like to say is, see, it is becoming very obvious. Couple of years ago,
the point you're making is the monsoon forecasters had already predicted a 20% deficient monsoon.
Yes.
So, in spite of that, the government didn't plan. First. Second,
the second is, you know, even if the monsoons were right, they can still plan properly. And if you have seen last couple of years, the previous government, we should really give credit to the power minister, earlier power minister, that lady Shobha. She had planned very well and she managed the power situation in such a way that nobody in Bangalore or in Karnataka felt the need for additional, you know, backup power. So
but even in the previous government, we did have power cuts.
Not much, not this much. Not this much. I think a little extra amount of effort was there from the government to see that this power is taken seriously, and I think at the ministerial level, this is my personal opinion, there was a concern about this and a better planning.
There was better planning. Mr. Jamdar.
I don't agree with that view, because it is not true there is no power cut. There is a power cut, but only thing they manage it very cleverly.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
In the sense, they supplied a good quantity of power to the urban areas by policy decision. So that the urban, literate, highly articulate people did not raise a hue and cry. Whereas urban areas, rural areas and farmers continue to suffer. Point one. Point two, I must say, during that time, they killed KPC. Because they purchased so much power and they did not pay their own companies. They paid the power suppliers from the private sector, so much so that they left a burden of unpaid bills to the KPCL to the extent of 11,000 crores. And today you check out the balance sheet of KPCL, government owes 11,000 crores from the BJP days, out of which 2,000 crores were the arrears. Leave us at 9,000 crores they left. So virtually, KPC has been virtually killed by them. You purchase, but provide for the budget. You don't provide in the budget, you purchase power and the government company suffers. Then you put a whole blame on the company's loss. It's not so. KPC is a highly profit-making corporation, a very efficient corporation. It's this kind of policy which is killing them, number one. Number two, what the Honorable KPC Farm Chairman mentioned, It is true that government should have planned, but it is not true to say that they did not plan. See, monsoon position is slightly different. In monsoon prediction in India has not been 100% accurate. It has been failing, it has been succeeding. Reliability is only 80%. To that extent, to sign a long-term agreement, there are plus and minus points. If you sign an agreement for 2 years, 3 years, etc., you tend to pay huge amount unnecessarily because they are priced highly. And secondly, if you plan heavily to buy and you don't require because of good monsoon, good supply, etc., then you don't need that power.
You don't need that power.
You don't
what you
require
already
that
paid.
years together contract don't require. You require 2-3 months advance, etc. And government of Karnataka, one need not blame. I am not a partisan to any party. I don't belong to any particular party. The minister, to the extent possible, and the Congress party has indeed planned, and they have already entered into some agreement. But the question there is, we must remember this: no state in the country is power surplus. Only private producers who are producing, they are in great demand. Every state wants to buy, and the monsoon is not only Karnataka, many other states also.
Many states have
And
monsoon has
particular
failed.
power position in no other state except 1 or 2 minor states in the Chhattisgarh or Orissa like that. There is a huge shortage. Everyone wants to buy power. Their power is costly. Now coming to the third point he made is thermal power stations. True. Now KPCL units have run as high as 92-95%. Question there is, the coal supply is limited by this coal companies to 80%, maximum 80% only. So if you overrun it, you exhaust your coal in a short time, and you are not allowed to keep more coal beyond 30 days of supply.
Can't you buy it from outside? Can't you get it from
correct,
outside?
but you can't keep the stock of coal for months to it burns, self-burning. Okay, that's another thing. The second point is the Coal India supplies, majority of supply comes from there. They are maximum 1 month you can keep. You can't keep beyond that. Luckily, they have done that on that front very well. The RPCL, the Raishur power plant, today has 4.5 lakh tons of coal, and Ballari has about 2.5 lakh tons of coal. That is sufficient for the permitted thing. Only thing, 2 of the units, 1 in each, they are down. That is a major point. Coal supply is reasonable. Coal purchase, even if you want to purchase, there is not much power available. So these are the factors in India. You can say country as a whole is lagging behind in power generation, power prediction generation. And in this, the whole beneficiary is the private sector.
The whole beneficiary is the private sector.
The southern states
Quickly, let's
are,
take in a caller. Let's
yeah.
quickly take in a caller. We have Mr. Lakshmi Ratan calling us from Whitefield. Yes, Mr. Ratan.
Yes, good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Please go on, Mr. Ratan.
Bansi and the panelists over there. We have been listening to a load of comments, technical comments by your esteemed panelists on why it is difficult to get the power and the problems of today is attributed to so many other reasons. But what we need to understand as a common power consumer, common citizen of Bangalore is, how is it that just a couple of years back, when SCOM, earlier known as Karnataka Electricity Board, was a big organization with absolute inefficiency was its watchword, and it was transformed to one of the best public utility organizations like BESCOM when Mr. P. Manivannan, IAS, he was in charge. And just a couple of years, it was in its peak of efficiency. The gentleman earlier mentioned about KPTCL and mentioned about the power and all that being supplied to BESCOM. But during Mr. Manivannan's time, the consumers had uninterrupted power supply, and also it was very, very citizen friendly. Why is it not happening now? Why is it not happening now?
Let me go to Mr. Jamdar, who is a very senior IAS officer.
Yes.
You are senior to Mr. Manivannan, and you have had a great name in the in the department as KPC no nonsense managing director. So please answer this question.
Yeah, you see, what the question is that Manivannan's time it went on very well. I already answered before he asked Namely, the government had taken a policy not to starve power supply to any city, including Bangalore. So they allowed the rural area to suffer by huge power cuts. They supplied 24-hour uninterrupted power to Bangalore city. Therefore, the gentleman is asking that question. Very good. I answered earlier. So that is not a very balanced policy. You can do it even today. There's a great deal. But thing is, those years are better, rains are not so bad. There's a Mani Manan, I'm not his enemy. He may be a friend of the man who asked the question, but question, I'm not his enemy nor his critic. He's a colleague of mine, a junior colleague of mine. Question there is, the question is whether he or his successor or predecessor can do well only if there is a supply of power. If there is adequate power available to purchase, he can do well. Today, power supply itself is in short supply from the private suppliers, and generation has been affected because of heavy deficit in the rains and power, the dams. As a result, not only Maniman, if it comes back to that KPTCL, it's only this only transmission company. It is not a generation company. He must remember that. A generation, when it is not there, what can transmission be
What
done?
can transmission?
What can it transmit there? So therefore, it is not correct to say that so and so is better, so and so is worse. It's not correct. It's to say that if you have adequate purchase power and there is sufficient supply of purchase power to be purchased, that's a very good. That is not the case today this year. And monsoon has failed, and that is also a fact, and that is another worsening factor this year. Therefore, if the government today decides let the poor, the rural area suffer worse than previously, and as divert all the power to Bangalore and about 220 cities in the state, it can still be supplied 24-hour power. Are you prepared to take that? That is a big political issue.
So kill the rural areas, supply to the power to the urban areas.
This year is the worst.
This year is the worst.
Yes.
Well, we have another caller joining us. Ajay joining us from Sampangi Ramnagar. Yes, Mr. Ajay.
Hello, Mr. Bansi. Good evening and good evening
Yeah, good evening.
to all the panelists.
Please share your thoughts.
Yeah. So, I was just saying it regarding the powerless Bangalore. We always come out and say there is monsoon deficit, this is a problem, that is a problem. But what are we taking steps to save the natural resources? What are the steps we are saving to save the energy? Today, many of the roads during the daytime, the lights are on. People are not using alternate forms of energy like solar energy. Why is government not coming out with mandatory solar panels to be installed on rooftops? Why is government buildings are not converted into solar power? Say a big vast park like Kaban Park, which needs a lot of electricity during the night times for the lights. Why is it that not being able to get converted to solar lights, which can actually save a lot of light? And second thing, Bangalore needs 24-hour power, but our villages don't require the power. If everything is supplied, the water is needed in Bangalore, the power is needed in Bangalore, villagers have to bear all the burnt. Why is it so? Why is government not taking concrete steps in order to, make sure that people are balanced? People on the rural are not suffering, or people are in Bangalore city are not suffering. If this is the case now, what is going to be then after 10 years?
Okay, thank you.
You see, the future days are going to be worse than what we have today if the same thing continues, and if we do not receive rains this month or next month. Last 7 to 8 years, rainfall pattern has changed drastically. We have received heavy rains in the months late of September, October and early November also. If that happens this year, situation will definitely improve, and that's what the government is hoping for and we are all praying for. Other than that, the points, the point raised by the gentleman are very relevant. In other words, he's talking about multi-pronged approach. One is saving of waste power, power which is wasted in so many parks, etc. That's a very good question. The government must really take a serious view of that. So most important question he asked, why is that solar proliferation not taking place? That's another very big question and a very correct question, and the government must worry about it. And if you have that encouraging policy and subsidy and big proliferation of solar units, domestic power consumption can be substituted. Roughly about 15 to 20% of power supply, demand will come down. You can transfer that power to elsewhere. But then some domestic power producers can also increase their production, feed it to the grid. That also supplies to the grid. These are all the very proactive policies which the state government today has failed to address in a big way. whereas other states have done. Karnataka has not been doing much. They are only talking about it, but doing portion is terribly lacking in this solar and wind. But when it comes to the hydel portion of it, government is totally helpless. Whether this government or past government or future government, the capacity is limited. They can only use that power for peaking hours. So to that extent, there's hardly any capacity left in the hydel sector. So that is a limiting factor. As I said earlier, thermal power sector has a very bleak future in Karnataka and the country as a whole. A new approach is definitely required.
New approaches are definitely required. We slip into a short break on
Yeah.
that note. Welcome back. We're talking of a powerless Karnataka. Now, Mr. Jamdar, I'd like to ask you a few questions. For example, if the government allows each house, all of us receive so much of sunlight in Karnataka. If each house has a solar panel to take care of their domestic needs, for example, hot water, for example, lighting, for example, these needs, it would virtually eliminate the domestic need for government power. You could transfer the whole thing to industry. Or on the other side, if industry can use solar power, use it intelligently, because so much of solar power is being used worldwide. Why can't we tap into this? And it's a free resource. We don't have to pay. Why are we not doing it? This is my
I can't agree with you less. The question is perfectly right. Question is, it is not true that government is preventing you from generating or going ahead on your own. Government doesn't prevent you. But government is not promoting it in a big way. For example, if you ask me, in my own house, I have a solar thermal and I have also 3 kV of solar PV. And that is generating power sufficient for my 16, 17 bulbs in the house. If I add 1 or 2 more kV, I can also run our TV and our fridge on that. No one prevents you on that, but there must be more promotion on that, giving certain subsidies, encouraging in a big way and all that. That is not taking place. That's a sad point. Thermal side, it's very easy, and luckily that has happened in a much bigger way than the solar PV. That is solar lighting. Solar heating is in a better way, but it can be expanded to almost made compulsory to every household. Like what you have done is rainwater harvesting.
Rainwater harvesting is compulsory. So
you
why
make
can't
it that also compulsory, and they have certain, but they have not enforced it. In Bangalore, they have somewhere for a house less than 30, 40, something they have done. Beyond that, they have to go for thermal, somewhere they have done it. But the enforcement is lacking. But that is precisely one of the avenues where great strides will have to be taken by the government.
Apartment complexes which are older than 30 years, more than 80% of them do not have solar power. So, and they're continuing to tap into the very scarce power. And the government is doing nothing to really encourage them, because first time investment for solar power is very high. If the government subsidizes it, makes it more available, perhaps it can help.
And that's true. In Germany, in Spain, in America, people do on their own, and surplus power they feed it to the grid. But they are rich countries. We can't compare them to Indian situation or to Bangalore or Karnataka situation. From that point of view, people who have money, people are willing, people who want to do on their self, be self-sufficient, they're definitely doing it on their own. But it requires much more than individual initiative. Long-term comprehensive policy definitely is required.
Long-term comprehensive policy required. We have a caller joining us. Mr. Kumar from BTM, Mr. Anil Kumar. Yes, Mr. Kumar.
Hello, I am Anil Kumar from BTM.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, first let the Bescom only show us how to generate power by solar panels. I read in the news in Kerala, one airport is run completely by solar power. They have the empty land there. They put the solar power, and it is running completely with solar power. Why can't they do it in our airport? Like big companies, Infosys, Biocom, Bell, HAL, all these have to do. They have a lot of money with them, not with the individual houses. See,
that's a good point.
What did 1 lakh rupees?
No, there is a issue also. Solar power is efficient, but a place like Bangalore, where the thermal radiation from the sun is much less compared to the hot places, your investment for solar power, I think he will know that, goes up. So, as he rightly said, at least for heating of water,
heating of water,
which takes away a lot of power, they should make it compulsory in all the cities and even villages. They should make it compulsory, because that's a very simple technology, proven technology. Number of people are available. It is cost per kVA is lower compared to solar installation. You can easily do now solar per.
What should they do?
They should insist.
They should incentivize it.
Incentivize? No, insist. They don't have to incentivize.
First make it mandatory.
Because mandatory to have solar panels for heating purposes.
In every household.
In every house it has to be made.
So 1.5 crore households in Karnataka, mandatory for all of them to have solar power.
And that is where the peak load comes.
That's where the peak load comes.
Morning 10 to morning 8 to 10 and evening peak load comes only from water heating, because during the daytime morning 6 o'clock lighting load is very less. Only cooking and heating load from the water is very high. I think to control the peak hour demand, that is one of the ways they should do it.
The government, because just now we depend on so many private players. The government doesn't have any major role in providing equipment for heating. Perhaps if the government enters, like, it is not a good idea. I'm asking you a question.
You see, the government does not.
You could provide it at half the cost.
Government does not have the bandwidth. You see, you cannot expect the government to do everything. There are a lot of restrictions, a lot of within the government. What all the things can the government handle? See, you know very well the bureaucracy.
Mysore Lamps has been lying vacant. That huge piece of land. So they have the wherewithal. All they need is a little will.
The very fact the private sector entered into power generation is only because the government itself is not able to invest so much money to create the infrastructure, either be it in airports or in roads or power generation. These are huge investments, but the government does not have the bandwidth. It must accept, and private parties, wherever it is possible, it should encourage, and it should I'll tell you something. The wind energy, we have very high potential in Karnataka, about 14,000-15,000 megawatts. When Tamil Nadu introduced a policy on wind energy, how the power will be generated, how it will be evacuated, how the power payments will be made, we didn't even have a paper in Karnataka how to do this. I went on telling the people in Karnataka, just copy what the Tamil Nadu government is doing. They were way ahead of us. When they had put in almost 1,000 megawatts, still we had not put in even 50 to 100 megawatts in Karnataka, because nobody know how it will be evacuated, how it will be paid. It's a big problem. So
correct. I want to ask another question. Our T&D losses are phenomenal. Myself and Mr. Sridhar is a journalist. Since you have covered power, we see huge T&D losses. So much of loss is because of power theft.
See, it's not true. See, what you said was true about 10 years back. It used to be as high as Bihar, so 42% loss. Today it has been with great effort brought down to around 20%. Some areas like Mangalore, it is a 15%, 10%, etc. The MESCOM, Mangalore Power Company, Transmission Company, is one of the best companies in the country. They have reduced to nearly 15 to...
This is because of hooking to private lines by
all
some
that is there.
festivals.
Now it's much less because the power supply has been to the pump sets free. That is much less. Earlier it used to be a huge problem. Even today it's there in urban area, but rural area much less. But
and so many deaths also because of that.
Yes, yes.
There's so many accidental deaths due to this hooking of power.
True. Particularly North Karnataka, rampant. No, South Karnataka, no less. But it is maximum there, North Karnataka. Now coming back here, the distribution and transmission losses, which were earlier called theft and dacoity losses, now have come down drastically by by more than 50%, from 42% to around 20%. It is supposed to be brought down to around 10%.
It was not transmission and distribution, it was theft and dacoity losses.
That's right, I used to call it as a joke anyway. Absolutely. It has come down, but still it is there. There's scope for reduction of it further. But coming back to this thermal policy and what the other panelists mentioned is very correct policy. People have to chip in a big way. And it does, as you said, it's not true that it requires huge space. It doesn't. For solar heating, what you require is roughly for a household of 6 or 8 people, all that you require by 10 by 10 space is enough 10 by 10 feet, you keep 3 panels there with 300 liters of water, it's sufficient for a family. And if you want solar, even less than that is required. So if you have a house of 30-40, you have built up area of about 600-700 square feet, you can generate much more power than you do over your rooftop. So it's not that safe. But at this moment, solar thermal is not costly. In about 25 to 35,000 rupees, you can do about 300 liters of heating water. But solar PV is still costly. It used to be very costly when we first went. It used to be 20 crore rupees per megawatt was a cost. Now it has come down drastically as low as 7 to 7 crore rupees per megawatt.
Which is still prohibitively
Excluding
expensive.
land cost.
Excluding land cost.
Which is still prohibitively expensive.
But
No, it's almost coming close to
gas
and thermal. But the problem is
not gas.
thermal is
ask-
also about 4.5, 5. Sir.
I want to ask.
Purchase from private purchase.
I want to ask, Dabol, earlier we didn't have gas, but now we have gas from Dabol coming up to Bengaluru. Why can't we think of more gas generation?
No, that is exactly where Bidadi is held up. It has already been planned, it has been tendered, it has been held up in the contractual litigation in the High Court for last 6 to 7 years.
So there are legal hurdles.
Yes.
Okay, quickly, Mr. Sridhar, I'd like to ask all of you, what is the way ahead? What do we do now?
Thanks, Bansi. I wanted to chip in and, I want to talk about the takeaways from this discussion. Number one, what I hear from the generation side, the generation experts, is augment capacity, existing capacity.
Absolutely.
Number two, what I hear on those calls, the end user speaking, save. Save power.
Save power, whatever you have.
So reduce T&D losses further, transmission and distribution losses further, and provide me cheaper power, better power, faster. Okay? And when I want it, on demand. Okay? Number three, this talk has been mainly about generation and very little about distribution.
No.
Now, let us talk end user, let us talk consumer. I am not just a journalist, I am also a power consumer.
Absolutely.
So is everybody else in this room or in the city. Okay, now let us look at it from his angle. He is not a power engineer. He is just an ordinary person who makes a livelihood doing what he does.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, what I'm trying to say here is the takeaway from all this is augment capacity, and number two, let us
let's say
reduce T&D losses. Number three, let us look at providing faster, better, cheaper power, on demand. On demand.
Okay. What is the road ahead?
You see, he's perfectly right. And the distribution side, so much is a scope for improvement. Now, it all depends on the distribution company's profitability. Today, as a fact stands, the Mangalore Power Company and the Bangalore Power Companies are doing very well. The reasons are obvious. I come back to that. Whereas Chamundi Power Corporation, Gulbarga Gescom and Hubli Hescom companies are in the red. So, facts are simple. Namely, when you have readily paying sectors like industry, like domestic connections, you have a profitable distribution company and less of IP sets. These are urban areas, hardly any IP sets in these two. There are some in hinterland here, but not as much as you compare to Gulbarga or Hescom. Gulbarga and Hubli area, you have more of IP set fellows who consume nearly about 1/3 of the available power and they don't pay anything. Domestic consumers who constitute about 20% of the whole consumption, etc., or also Bhagya Jyoti, so many free areas, and you rightly said hookers and all that. Hooking, the problem is there. So there also recovery of the power use is very, very poor, and not many industries and paying consumers are there in Gulbarga area and the Hubli area. Consequently, those companies are in the red. Whereas in these areas, Hubli, that is Bangalore and Mangalore, they are profitable companies. So distribution is very good. So therefore, when
this
you
is because of the end-use consumer.
Exactly, end-use consumer, one paying consumers. Non-paying consumers where their number is big, and backward areas, they are perennially continuing to be under loss. Now, this is where the government has to take a policy decision on that. Now, Bangalore area paying sectors are very well. You don't worry much about it. Absolutely. What about Hubli? Mysore.
So we need
and
something
Gulbarga.
drastic there.
Yes.
Okay. Quickly, Mr. Muralidhar.
Oh yeah, I have only to say
In
this.
one
There are
sentence, if you
there
can
are
say.
two solutions. One is a short term. How you are going to augment power to the state so that the citizens or the users of the power in Karnataka don't suffer too much, 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours. How fast you can bring the power back, that is one thing. They should be really doing very fast work.
Effectively do something in the short term.
Short term, and also try to buy even if it is at a higher price.
Okay.
Because
And do something in the long term also.
Short term.
At the end of it, we need power. We don't know how you do it.
Long
Let's do
term,
it.
not only just talk. Now you called us because there is a 6 hours power shortage.
Absolutely.
Last year you didn't have this discussion because nobody had a
Nobody.
power shortage.
Absolutely.
But the government should sit up and take note and say that
before it
things
is
can,
too late.
Before it is too late.
We are running out of time. With that, it's a wrap on this. It is time for us Bengaloreans and the government to wake up to this power problem before it is too late. On the other side is the news bulletin. Stay tuned.